When we meet Hank MacLean, he's a loving father, and he's the competent overseer of Vault 33. From all appearances, he's a great father, and he's the kind of overseer that every overseer should be. He's active in his Vault community. He takes part in all of the Vault activities alongside his family. When he's taken from Vault 33, it's a huge blow to the community.
I know that.
I know we're all hurting right now.
We get the impression that he was respected and loved, and that he had a history of making good and popular decisions. The council that replaced him was aimless. They couldn't agree upon a leader, they couldn't agree upon a direction.
I think this conversation would benefit from some actual ideas.
They didn't have the tact and discretion of a good leader like Hank did.
Sirs, it's about the water chip.
Go ahead.
It's the type of thing Overseer MacLean would have preferred to discuss privately.
Well, he's not here now, is he?
Okay, well, the water chip is destroyed.
They naively sought to rehabilitate the Raiders.
I can teach the Raiders Shakespeare, and when they're ready, Marlowe.
Well, I would like to start with a moral framework. Kant, Mill, and so on.
Something Hank, in his wisdom, would never have done.
We can do what they would have done to us.
Wow.
Jeez Louise, Norm.
You're right, you know. If your father were here, he'd do the right thing.
During Lucy's wedding dinner party, we learn about Hank's values, and he truly believes in the mission of the Vaults.
To keep the candle of civilization lit while the rest of the world has been cast into darkness.
Everything he wants here is reasonable and noble. He's proud at having kept the candle of civilization lit in his vault. He's proud that his daughter Lucy's children will recolonize the wasteland with Vault Tech values. And he's committed to his family. It's Hank who saves his daughter's life when her new husband tries to kill her again. He knocks him out with a shovel and drowns him in a pickle vat. When Moldaver invades the vault, just as she's about to leave, she gives Hank a choice. Save a group of vault dwellers or save his daughter.
Them or her.
He thinks about it for a brief moment, and he chooses to save his daughter.
Hey, stop! No, stop!
You are my world.
She is his world. And I don't think any father can blame Hank for making this decision. Turns out those other vault dwellers were spared by Moldaver. She allowed them to run just in the nick of time so that they avoided being killed by her explosion. But Hank didn't know she was going to do that. He saved his daughter because the thought of losing her was too much for him to bear. Which makes the great revelation at the end that he is the villain all the more surprising.
Hey, we gotta get out of here.
No, not with him.
Why not with him? What do you mean?
It was him. It was him.
What was him?
Shady's hands.
It was him.
People are known by their actions, and Hank spent decades in Vault 33 leading his community with wisdom, teaching his children, loving them, and caring for them with kindness. How could a man who has spent a lifetime doing such good be revealed to be a man who could do such evil? Well, the clues were there for us at the very beginning. We just needed more information before they made sense. We learn in the very first episode that Hank MacLean was from Vault 31.
Were you scared when you married Mom?
Terrified. Well, I'd never stepped foot outside Vault 31.
And as the series continues, we begin to learn that there is some sort of conspiracy going on with people who come from Vault 31.
You don't think it's weird that we always select an overseer from Vault 31? They did the same exact thing in Vault 32.
Vault 31 was filled with buds. These were cryogenically frozen employees of Vault-Tec. Employees who showed good managerial character attributes. People that Vault-Tec wanted to breed with residents from Vault 33 and Vault 32 to produce a generation of super managers who would be better equipped to recolonize the wasteland. Vault-Tec believed that in the event of a nuclear apocalypse, that the surface dwellers would all be dead.
What if people are still alive on the surface? There'll be Stone Age creatures probably eat whoever steps out of your vaults.
That isn't an issue. Our vaults have the resources to survive for centuries. Meanwhile, our competitors, every other human who isn't us, will be dead on the surface.
But Vault-Tec was wrong. There were survivors. Not everyone on the surface was dead. And somehow, Hank knew that. Which is why during his dinner party speech, he talked about teaching the surface dwellers a better way.
We don't know much about what's up there. Violence, lawlessness, desperation. These survivors will need to be shown a better way.
Somehow, Hank found out that there were still people alive. But he talks about them as if they're all Stone Age creatures. And this is what he taught to all of the residents of Vault 33, which is why Lucy, even though she's never met a raider in her life, upon realizing that her husband was from the surface, instantly thought that he was a raider.
Raiders.
Why did Hank MacLean, recently released from Vault 31, break with established Vault-Tec thought that everyone on the surface would have died out? Well, many years ago, his wife found evidence that there were people on the surface.
Your mother discovered that something was siphoning the vault's water away. From that one clue, she deduced that maybe civilization had returned to the surface.
But this can't be true. Vault-Tec said that no one would survive the nuclear apocalypse of 2077. How could there be people above ground siphoning water? Hank MacLean couldn't conceptualize a reality where Vault-Tec was wrong, which is why he didn't want to hear any more about it, and he forbade his wife from talking about it to anyone else.
When she told her husband, he said it was a ridiculous idea and that she should tell no one.
But that response was out of character for a guy who's usually so level-headed and loving towards his family. Up until this point, Hank MacLean has been interested in science and technology.
Science skills. Obviously, mine are nothing compared to my dad's, but I always relish a challenge.
You'd think learning something like this would pique the curiosity of Hank MacLean, but it does the exact opposite. It angers him. It was that response that made Rose MacLean realize that something was off about Hank.
And that's when she realized that her husband, the overseer, was hiding things. So she ran away and took her children. And she found this wonderful city that was everything the vaults had promised.
She is lying.
It angered him because it directly contradicted his worldview. And admitting that one's worldview is wrong is a very difficult thing to do. He was hiding something from her. He was hiding who he really was. He was hiding where he really came from. And he was hiding where his priorities were. But Hank really did love his family. And so he leaves the vault in search of his wife, in search of his children, and stumbles upon the NCR.
But then her husband came after her. And when she decided not to return home, he took the children and he burned that city to the ground.
And this isn't something they just lay on us at the very end. It's something they allude to in the middle of the series. When Walking with Maximus, Lucy talks about feeling the heat from the sun.
Up until I was 6, I really thought that the big light on our farm was the sun. My mom used to take me to play out under that light, and I swear I could feel the sun baking my skin. After my mom was gone, I realized it was just her that made it all feel so real.
She concludes that it must have been the love of her mother that she was really feeling, but no, it was the heat from the sun, because her mother took her outside. And when being dragged along by the ghoul, she talks about how her father lost a bunch of weight in the plague of 77 that took her mother.
In the Great Plague of 77, people starved, my mother included.
Everyone had to quarantine. They couldn't work the farms together. My dad dropped to 128 pounds, and he still refused to do anything like this.
But it wasn't the plague of 77 that killed her mother. Hank killed her mother.
My mother. What happened to her?
I think you know.
He killed her when he destroyed Shady Sands, and Rose MacLean became a feral ghoul. The plague of 77 tells us how Hank was able to do this. We know that he didn't do it alone. He destroyed Shady Sands and killed Lucy's mother with the help of another Vault 31 resident, Betty.
Betty, when my mother died, what happened to her Pip-Boy?
It was buried with her.
How are you so sure?
Because I buried her myself. Me and your father.
There was no plague of 77. The plague of 77 was an excuse to quarantine all of the residents of Vault 33 in their own private rooms so that no one would see Hank MacLean and Betty leave the vault. After all, the people of Vault 33, including Betty, emphasize how important it is to keep the doors closed.
But our first priority has to be to maintain the security of this vault. That means not opening any of our doors.
Well said, Betty.
They can't risk sitting down and explaining to everyone in Vault 33 what they're really doing. They needed to keep their mission a secret. So they conjured up a fake plague of 77. They quarantined everyone else in the vault inside their own homes. And then Hank and Betty left the vault to retrieve Rose and the children, and ultimately to destroy Shady Sands, as corroborated by the chalkboard we find in Vault 4. This, of course, raises a bit of a problem with what we recently learned from Todd Howard about how Shady Sands wasn't actually destroyed until sometime after 2281. And even this is foreshadowed in the very first episode. After the attack on the vault, after losing so many of his residents, after saving his daughter, he finally puts the pieces together. He might not have ever met Moldaver, but there's only one explanation for why she came to this vault, and at last, he finally figured it out.
I think I know who you are.
They came to his vault because of what he did to Shady Sands. The reason Hank MacLean lost all that weight is not because the plague wiped out all of their food. It's because he had to survive in the wasteland without proper nutrition. And like Lucy said, he refused to resort to cannibalism to get by.
What? What's so funny?
Well, as what people say they did, and what they really did.
What Hank really did is he committed genocide against a people, instead of staying safe at home in his vault, eating 3 square meals a day. His wife Rose was right. Civilization had returned to the wasteland, and it wasn't thanks to Vault Tech. Upon seeing this, a normal person would accept that Vault Tech was wrong. They made a false prediction about the end of the world. Big deal. Could happen to anybody. Time to move on with our lives. But Hank couldn't do that because he was radicalized. Hank knew that Vault Tech dropped the bombs, or at least he believed that Vault Tech dropped the bombs, and he knows why they did it.
A nuclear event would be a tragedy, but also an opportunity, because when we are the only ones left, there will be no one to fight. This is our chance to make war obsolete.
Ending war is a noble goal. Any good person would want to do everything he could to try to end war. Vault Tech's solution to ending war is to drop the bombs, to kill everybody but Vault Tech. The problem is that for millennia, mankind has evolved cultures and communities without intentional guidance.
Because in our current societal configuration, which took shape without intentional guidance, we have friction, we have conflict, and we have war.
Without that intentional guidance, those communities were prone to fight each other. They were prone to have disagreements. They were prone to solve them with war. But if there was only one human community left on Earth, there would be no disagreements. There would be nothing to solve with war.
If the problem with the world is factions, endlessly fighting, endlessly at war, then what is the solution but to get rid of the factions?
And Hank's a good person. Of course he hates violence. Of course he hates war.
You've seen what it's like up here. Everyone equally afraid, equally miserable, forced to do horrible things in order to survive. In Lucy, I had to make a choice between their violent world and our peaceful one. And I believe, Lucy, I know I made the right choice.
But Cooper Howard was a good person too. Cooper Howard was a decent, moral man. He didn't want people to suffer. He was loyal to his country. He was a patriot. He fought in the military. He supported Vault-Tec. Primarily because his wife worked there, but also because Vault-Tec was an American company and his personal sponsor.
Well, this is America. Everybody has a sponsor, and I'm not ashamed to earn a living.
Vault-Tec's the devil, man.
My wife works here. You really think Barb's a devil?
No, okay. I like Barb, okay?
But that was before he knew what Vault-Tec was really doing. When at last he finds out, he's horrified.
How can you guarantee results?
By dropping the bomb ourselves.
Because Cooper Howard wasn't radicalized. Hank was. It's hard to imagine that a person can become radicalized for their employer, but we have to remember that Vault-Tec was paying his salary, likely paying his health insurance. Hank MacLean had a lot to lose by going against Vault-Tec. As Cooper Howard learned the hard way, Coop got to the point he was where we saw him at the beginning of the series, doing children's parties and paying for alimony after his divorce because he lost Vault-Tec as a sponsor. Became victim to the Red Scare, likely due to his objection to Vault-Tec as a company and what they were doing after learning that they were planning to destroy the world. Hank didn't want that to happen to him. For every whistleblower in a company, there are countless men and women who knew the exact same things, but instead chose to remain silent. It's not so outlandish that Hank MacLean would step in line to do whatever Vault-Tec wanted to do. Believe whatever Vault-Tec wanted him to believe, even if it meant genocide and the end of the world. Now, maybe Vault-Tec really did drop the bombs in 2077, or maybe they didn't. But if they did, we know why. And it was to get rid of factions, to get rid of competition so that they could end war and human suffering. And Hank MacLean truly believed in these noble goals. The methods didn't matter to him. It was the end result that mattered, not the way by which it was achieved. And so there stands Hank, staring face to face with the reality of Shady Sands, with the reality that Vault-Tec's presumption about the end of the world was wrong. And it's not like the NCR was a perfect society. The NCR had been through many wars. The NCR had been involved in tons of violence, confrontations with the Brotherhood of Steel, illegal annexations. They had recently won a war against Caesar's Legion at Hoover Dam. The very year that Hank discovers Shady Sands, the NCR is actively advancing into the Mojave Wasteland. Clearly, whatever these survivors did to build their new society didn't solve the ultimate problem, which was war. And so, Hank decided to solve this problem the same way Vault-Tec did, by burning everything. You'd think that the fact that the nuclear apocalypse of 2077 didn't work at eradicating all humanity would have caused Hank to pause. Would have caused Hank to say, maybe this won't work. After all, it didn't work last time. Civilization arose from the ashes, and war arose from the ashes. If it didn't work then in 2077, maybe it won't work if I do it here at Shady Sands. But he didn't stop to ask those questions, not because he was stupid, not because he was evil and he hates human life and he loves human suffering. It was because he was radicalized by Vault-Tec. He believed in Vault-Tec's philosophy. It was Vault-Tec or nothing. It's hard to write Hank MacLean off as just another evil character when we've seen the good side of his character too, the sacrificial side of his character, the love this man has for his family, the devotion he has for his community. But that's the way evil works in the real world. There are so many human belief systems out there, religions, politics, cultures, and tribes. Sometimes these belief systems dehumanize people who participate in other belief systems and encourage their people to treat these others as less than human. Vault-Tec treated their people great, with dignity and respect. But everyone else who wasn't part of Vault-Tec, they were something else. They were surface dwellers. They were competition. They labeled them as something other than human, and it doesn't matter what happens to them as long as the candle of civilization remains lit with Vault-Tec. Of course, not every belief system encourages their people to dehumanize others, but the ones that do can cause otherwise good people to commit evil acts. How many of us know good people, loving people, who have made hateful and evil decisions in the name of these world philosophies in order to adhere to these belief structures? People who ordinarily wouldn't hurt a fly, who would treat each other fairly in barter and trade, who would treat each other kindly in everyday circumstances, but who would cut you off if you betray their world philosophy, the way Hank cut his wife off when she betrayed Vault-Tec.
I loved your mother, but you stopped being your mother when she left home.
Yes, every now and then we get truly evil people who delight in the pain they inflict on others for the sake of that pain, or maybe because they're in pain. But there's also a great deal of evil that is done in this world by normal people who have become radicalized. Hank really did love his family, which is why his face didn't light up with joy when Lucy arrived at the Griffith Observatory. He saw Lucy arrive and he became afraid, because now one of two things is gonna happen. Either Moldaver's just gonna kill Lucy, or Lucy's gonna discover the truth. Hank knows how Lucy was raised. Lucy was raised to value all of the same principles that he valued, except that Lucy had never been radicalized by Vault-Tec. Lucy can never find out what Hank really did. After all, she would never understand. She doesn't understand the subtleties of Vault-Tec philosophy like Hank does. Once she finds out Hank knows, she's gonna be disappointed, which is why he tried to interrupt Moldaver at every opportunity.
Don't listen to
You think...
Lucy, let's go. Let's get out of here.
So
she is lying. She's lying. Lucy, do not
can activate
listen
cold fusion
to her.
Which is why he lashed out in anger.
Lucy! Look at me! Look at me! Lucy!
He was in the process of losing his daughter, a daughter he truly loved. He allowed Moldaver to kidnap him so he could save his daughter. He gave the cold fusion codes to Moldaver to appease his daughter.
Give her the code. Give her the code, Dad.
To give him time to convince her that he was really right. The last thing he wanted to do was lose her, but now that she's here, he's got to get her on board.
I did what was necessary to save our people. And that woman over there, she's no different than me.
Because if she doesn't get on board with Vault-Tec, there's no redeeming her. When Rose walked away from Vault 33, she walked away from Vault-Tec, and she ceased being Lucy's mother. She ceased being Hank's wife. She ceased being family. And by refusing to obey Hank in this scene, Lucy's following in her mother's footsteps. He knows Lucy. He raised Lucy. And he knows that the wasteland wasn't gonna change Lucy.
I'm your father, Lucy. You came all this way for me.
which is why he calls her bluff.
You're not gonna hurt me.
He called her bluff. She wasn't gonna really kill him, but he was interrupted. He didn't get to finish convincing her to get on board with Vault-Tec. He flees because he has to. Maybe he's also given up on Lucy at this point, like he gave up on his wife. Or maybe he thinks he still has a chance to convince her of the truth.
You look out at this wasteland, looks like chaos, but there's always somebody behind the wheel, and that's who I want to talk to. That's where your daddy is headed.
But you let him go.
Well, it's easier to track a stuck pig than to ask it where it's off to.
I wonder if there's a redemption arc for Hank MacLean. He's just done so much evil that it's hard to see how he could possibly be redeemed. The first step would for him to become de-radicalized. He lost his wife because of Vault-Tec. He just lost his daughter because of Vault-Tec. Maybe that's finally what it's going to take for him to doubt Vault-Tec. If he can get to the point where he can admit that maybe Vault-Tec is wrong sometimes, then that can lead him down a path of realizing that maybe Vault-Tec was wrong this time. If he can get to that point, then maybe he can recognize that what he did was wrong. Maybe he can admit to the evil that he's done. Maybe he can repent. I can't imagine what he could possibly do to atone for the destruction of Shady Sands, to atone for the death of his own wife. His hands are drenched in the blood of hundreds of thousands of people. How can you atone for that? I can't think of a solution. Maybe there is no redemption arc for Hank MacLean. Maybe he is the ultimate villain. Or maybe he knows something that no one else knows. After all, the ghoul told us that there's always someone behind the wheel. Maybe Hank knows who's really pulling the strings. And maybe his redemption arc involves doing something to stop them. But then again, maybe not. This is the point where I usually talk about a character's special stats. But when I sat down to plot it out, I realized that we don't really know enough about him to accurately plot out his specials. I think he's really charismatic, and you'd have to be a good overseer. He was able to charm everyone in Vault 33, and he probably utilized that charisma to climb the ranks of Vault-Tec, to become an executive assistant. We know he's intelligent enough to be good at science, but he's not intelligent enough to realize that he's been radicalized, to realize that Vault-Tec is comprised of humans that can sometimes be wrong. He wasn't perceptive enough to realize that Moldaver and her raiders were not Vault 32 residents, something that his son picked up on instead. And we see only a brief moment of him being physically active, so I just don't think there's enough in the series for us to flesh out his special stats just yet. But perhaps we'll get enough of Hank MacLean to do so in Season 2. What do you think of Hank? Do you think there was ever any good within him? That he even has the possibility of being redeemed? Or do you think that he's a lost cause? He's just fundamentally evil. He needs to be resisted and defeated. And where do you think Season 2 will take him? Down a path towards redemption or down a path towards greater culpability? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I publish new Fallout videos every week on my channel, so if you don't want to miss the next one, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. If you have already, but you still feel like you're missing out on YouTube notifications, consider following me on Twitter at Oxhorn. I update Twitter manually with every new piece of content that I publish. I've got a plush for sale. My one-of-a-kind plush is ready to ship, but I've got limited inventory. If you want to make sure you get one before I run out, snag one today. I've also got a merch shop with completely unique designs that you can't find anywhere else. My designs come on shirts in a variety of men's, women's, and children's sizes, and in a wide array of colors. You can find them on other products as well, like smartphone cases, pillows, posters, mugs, stickers, prints, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in another way, consider becoming a patron on Patreon or a member here on YouTube. YouTube members get little badges that appear next to their names in the comment sections of my videos, and access to ox emojis that they can use in my video comments and in the live chats of my live streams. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon with more Fallout videos.
Don't be carrying any guns into the casino.